Sophia Irving felt the grit of the concrete beneath her worn boots, a familiar comfort in the heart of the LA Arts District. This was her canvas, her truth. She navigated the labyrinth of murals and forgotten alleys, her trusty 35mm camera slung across her chest, a silent promise of unfiltered reality. Every peeling poster, every splash of spray paint, every shadow held a story. She wasn't looking for headlines. She was looking for the pulse of the city, the raw, unvarnished moments that others walked right past. Her last collaboration had taught her a brutal lesson about what happens when truth got twisted, when art became leverage. Never again would she be a pawn. Her photographs would speak for themselves, pure and uncorrupted. Tonight, the air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and distant exhaust fumes. She had ventured into a riverbed underpass, a place most people avoided, drawn by the stark geometry of the concrete and the way the urban decay whispered forgotten narratives. A broken neon sign, half submerged in a murky puddle, cast a fractured, pulsating glow, painting the scene in distorted hues of electric blue and sickly green. It was perfect. The kind of shot that demanded to be seen, a melancholic beauty in the forgotten spaces. She lifted her camera, her eye pressed to the viewfinder, the world narrowing to a precise frame. Her finger hovered over the shutter button, waiting for the exact moment the light hit just right. The reflection rippled with purpose. It was almost there. A shadow flickered at the edge of her periphery, too fast, too sudden to register as anything but a shift in the oppressive quiet. Then came the sound. Not the distant rumble of a train or the city's usual hum, but something sharper, more guttural. A muffled gasp, a choked cry that died too quickly. Sophia's breath hitched. Her finger, still on the shutter, instinctively tightened. Click. The sound of the camera's mechanism, usually a satisfying confirmation, now ripped through the sudden, horrifying silence like a gunshot. Her lens, still focused, had captured it. A figure dark against the concrete, slumped to the ground. Another figure, taller, colder, stood over them, a dark shape in the fractured neon glow. A flash of something metallic, then nothing. Just the chilling stillness. Sophia froze, every muscle locked, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Her eye was still glued to the viewfinder. The impossible, undeniable image burned into her retina. She had seen it, all of it, the brutal, silent act, the cold, efficient movements. And her camera, her precious truth-teller, had recorded it. The neon reflection in the puddle shimmered, no longer beautiful, but a grotesque mirror to the grim reality that had just unfolded. Panic clawed at her throat. This wasn't a story for a gallery. This wasn't art. This was a nightmare. She wasn't just a witness. She was a photographic witness, and the evidence was literally in her hands. The weight of her camera suddenly felt crushing, a leaden anchor. Her past trauma screamed at her. You saw truth, and truth found you, but not the kind you can walk away from. She had sworn never to be a headline, but now she wasn't just a witness to a crime. She was part of it, irrevocably tangled. The killer hadn't seen her, she was sure, but the camera's click had been loud in the dead air. She had to move, now, before the shadows shifted again. Sophia's legs burned, a desperate fire fueled by raw terror. She scrambled out of the underpass, the click of her camera echoing in her mind. The image of the slumped figure burned behind her eyelids. Her breath tore in ragged gasps, each inhale a fresh jab of panic. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. The city lights, usually a comforting hum, now felt like 1,000 predatory eyes. Every shadow stretched, every distant siren shrieked like a warning just for her. She burst onto a narrow, debris-strewn alley, thinking she could lose herself in the maze of brick and grime, but the path ahead was abruptly blocked. Not by a wall, but by a presence. A man, emerging from the deeper shadows beneath a broken fire escape, as if the night itself had coalesced into human form. He was tall, impeccably dressed, even in the gloom, his silhouette sharp against the distant glow of a neon sign. Felix Parker. The name she didn't know yet, but the danger radiating from him was palpable, a cold wave that stopped her dead in her tracks. Her heart, already a frantic drum, now slammed against her ribs, threatening to burst. He moved with a languid grace that spoke of contained power, stepping into a sliver of light. His eyes, dark and intelligent, swept over her, taking in her disheveled state. The camera still clutched in her trembling hands. There was no surprise in his gaze, only a chilling certainty. He already knew. He knew what she had seen. "You witnessed something unfortunate." His voice was low, a rumble that resonated in the quiet alley, devoid of any question. It was a statement, an undeniable truth delivered with an authority that stole her breath. "And you have evidence." Sophia could only stare, her throat tight with unspent screams. How? How did he know? She hadn't made a sound, not really, beyond the camera's fateful click. "The men involved," he continued, his eyes unwavering, "are not forgiving. You're in extreme danger, Miss Irving." He didn't ask her name, he stated it, another chilling confirmation of his reach. Immediate danger! A cold dread seeped into her bones, replacing the adrenaline. He wasn't threatening her. He was stating facts, facts that were far more terrifying than any direct threat. Her past trauma, the sting of being exploited, resurfaced, but this felt different, infinitely more perilous. "I can offer you protection," he said, his gaze dropping to her camera. "A secure location, non-negotiable." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Protection. From whom? From the men he knew she had seen. And what was the price of this non-negotiable safety? It wasn't stated, but it was clear in the hard line of his jaw, the unwavering intensity of his eyes. It was clear in the way he stood, unmoving, utterly in control. Sophia searched for an escape, any escape. Her eyes darted around the alley, but there was nowhere to run, no one to call. The city had gone silent, leaving her alone with this dangerous stranger. He wasn't violent, not yet, but his presence was a cage she couldn't break. Her mind raced, a frantic scramble for options, but there were none. She was cornered, exposed, and utterly helpless. What do you want?" She finally managed, her voice a reedy whisper, a faint, almost imperceptible shift in his expression. "To keep you alive," he said, and for a fleeting second she almost believed him. "And to ensure justice in my own way." His gaze hardened, losing any trace of warmth. "But first, you come with me." She looked at her camera, then back at him. The choice felt impossible, yet there was no real choice at all. One devil, unknown and terrifying, or the certain horrifying fate of being left to the men she had just photographed. Shaken, with nowhere else to turn, Sophia felt a bitter resignation settle over her. "Fine," she choked out, the word barely audible. She hated it, hated the feeling of losing all control, but the alternative was death. She would go with him, for now, but she wouldn't trust him. Not yet. The world outside had blurred into a dizzying rush of neon and shadow, then solidified into the sterile quiet of an underground parking garage. Sophia had been ushered into a sleek, dark SUV, Felix Parker, a silent, formidable presence beside her. Now she stood in a penthouse high above the city, the sprawling lights of Los Angeles, an indifferent tapestry beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. This was her gilded cage. Everything was expensive, meticulously chosen. Polished dark wood gleamed under recessed lighting, silk drapes hung heavy, and a minimalist marble sculpture commanded the center of the living room. It was beautiful, undeniably, but it felt cold, impersonal, a stark, suffocating contrast to the vibrant, chaotic life she usually inhabited. Her small apartment, cluttered with film canisters and half-developed prints, felt 1,000,000 miles away. This place screamed money, power, and a kind of polished isolation that made her skin crawl. She clutched her 35mm camera, the familiar weight of it her only anchor in this surreal new reality. It was a piece of her old life, a silent testament to the truth she sought, now a burden in her hands. She ran a thumb over the cool metal, a faint tremor in her fingers. This camera had led her here, into this opulent prison. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time seemed to warp in the oppressive quiet. She paced the perimeter of the vast living room, her boots sinking slightly into plush rugs, feeling utterly alien. Her mind replayed the murder, the sickening click of her camera, the cold efficiency of the killer. Then Felix's face, etched in shadow, his unwavering eyes. The door clicked open, and he was there. Felix Parker. He hadn't changed clothes, still impeccably sharp, his dark suit a stark contrast to the casual comfort of her own jeans and worn jacket. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who owned every space he entered, and Sophia felt a fresh surge of resentment. He didn't offer an apology, didn't ask if she was comfortable. He simply walked into the room, his gaze locking onto hers, cutting straight to the point. "The man you photographed," Felix began, his voice low, devoid of inflection, "is Marco Solis. He's not just a developer. He's the LA arm of a cartel-backed operation. His investments, his projects, are all fronts for laundering money, for expanding their reach into the city's legitimate infrastructure." Sophia felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. A developer. She'd heard whispers, of course, about Solis and his aggressive buyouts in the arts district, but she'd dismissed them as typical big city greed. Not this, not murder, not cartels. The scale of it was dizzying, terrifying. "He cleans his money through multiple channels," Felix continued, gesturing vaguely towards the city lights, as if Solis's empire was out there, shimmering in the distance. "He's untouchable by conventional means. Too many people in too many pockets." Sophia swallowed, her throat dry. "And you? You're going to touch him?" The sarcasm was thin, barely disguising her fear. Felix's dark eyes held hers. "My code, Miss Irving, is no hits for hire, only balance. Solis has disrupted that balance. He's become too brazen, too powerful. He's attracting unwanted attention to operations. I prefer to remain quiet." He paused, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. "Your photos, they are not just evidence. They are leverage. The only thing that can truly topple him, her photos, leverage." The word clawed at her, bringing back the bitter taste of her past. She had sworn never to be a tool again, never to have her art, her truth, exploited. "Leverage for what?" she demanded, her voice shaking despite herself. "To get rid of him so you can put someone else in his place? To restore your balance?" He didn't flinch. "His removal is a necessary disruption. It sends a message. And your photographs, released strategically, will ensure that message is loud and clear, and devastatingly public. They can end him." Sophia stared at him, the implications sinking in. Her photos could destroy a man, a cartel, an empire. But they would also be used by Felix, a man she knew was dangerous, whose motives were still shrouded in shadow. She was trapped, not just in this opulent cage, but in a moral dilemma that felt heavier than the camera in her hands. He needed her photos, and the price for her safety, she realized, was far more than just her freedom. It was her complicity. Sophia's hands tightened on her camera strap, the leather digging into her palm. "Strategic releases," she echoed, the words tasting like ash. "That's just pretty packaging for manipulation, isn't it? You want to use my work, my truth, to serve your agenda." How is that any different from the exploitation I've spent my life fighting against? Felix watched her, his expression unreadable, but a flicker in his dark eyes suggested he was assessing her, not dismissing her. "It's different," he stated, his voice calm, "because the alternative is your death. And Solis continues his operations unchecked. My agenda, Miss Irving, ensures you live to fight another day, and it ensures a far more dangerous man is removed from power." "At what cost to my integrity?" she shot back, her voice rising, fueled by a decade of idealistic fury and the raw wound of betrayal. "Who decides what gets released? What gets framed? You? This isn't about just balance for you, is it? It's about power. Your power. And you want to use my photographs, my art, as a weapon." The word weapon felt like a betrayal itself, a desecration of her life's work. He took a slow step closer, invading her personal space, though he didn't touch her. The air crackled between them, thick with tension. "Power is a currency, Miss Irving, and balance requires its careful redistribution. Your idealism is admirable, naive perhaps, but admirable. It also makes you uniquely suited to this." Sophia scoffed. "Suited to what? Being your pawn. I've been there before. Trusted someone with my work, with my vision, only for them to twist it into something unrecognizable, something that served their own selfish ends. I won't do it again." Her voice cracked on the last word, the memory a sharp, visceral pain. She hadn't meant to reveal that, but the pressure, the fear, and his relentless pragmatism had ripped it out of her. Felix's gaze sharpened, a sudden, almost predatory interest in his eyes. "A past collaborator," he murmured, not a question, but a quiet confirmation. He hadn't missed the slip, the tremor in her voice. He saw the vulnerability, the old scar she'd just exposed. "Someone took your work, twisted your narrative, made you a headline you didn't want to be." A shiver ran down her spine, not entirely from fear. He understood, or at least he saw. It was unnerving the way he peeled back her layers without her permission. "It wasn't about headlines," she whispered defensively. "It was about truth, and they distorted it, used it. I won't let you do the same." "Then we will ensure you control the narrative," Felix said, his voice surprisingly gentle, yet firm. "You curate the images, you decide the timing. My role is to ensure the message lands, and that you remain safe while it does, and that the right people see it." He paused, his eyes holding hers, a magnetic pull she couldn't ignore. "We both want Solis gone. We just have different methods for achieving it. Your truth, my reach. A partnership. A partnership." The word hung in the air, a dangerous, tempting offer. Her mind screamed no, but a part of her, a part she hated to admit, was intrigued. The thought of having the power to truly expose Solis, not just witness, but act, was compelling. And the way Felix looked at her, not as a victim but as a force to be reckoned with, was strangely intoxicating. It was a dangerous game, one where the lines of consent blurred with the necessity of survival. But the raw intensity between them, the clash of their worlds, sparked something undeniable, something almost electric. She hated him for it, for making her even consider it, but she couldn't tear her eyes away. She was tangled, caught in his web, and a terrifying, exhilarating part of her wanted to see where it led. Sophia stared at the photographs, spread across the smooth, cold marble table in the penthouse. They were printed on Felix's state-of-the-art printer, each detail sickeningly clear. The slumped figure, the metallic glint, the dark shape of the killer. Marco Solis. The name now had a face, a brutal history etched into every pixel. Her own work, her truth, captured in a moment of pure, horrifying accident. She traced the outline of the victim's shadow with a trembling finger. The images screamed for justice, a raw, undeniable exposé of evil. This wasn't some abstract concept. It was a man's life, snuffed out in a riverbed underpass. And her camera had been there. But the ethical dilemma gnawed at her, a bitter acid in her gut. Felix wanted to use these, to weaponize them. He called it balance, but she knew what power plays looked like. She'd lived through one, her art, her vision, twisted and exploited. She had sworn it would never happen again. Yet here she was, in a gilded cage, with a man who held her life in his hands, implicitly demanding she hand over her truth as well. The thought made her sick. She was Sophia Irving, the street photographer who sought authenticity, who fought against manipulation. Now she was being asked to become a participant in the very thing she despised, to become a tool in someone else's shadowy war. A soft click of the door. Felix. She didn't turn, but her muscles tensed, her breath catching. He moved silently, a dark presence beside her, his scent of expensive cologne and something subtly dangerous filling the air. "They are undeniable," he stated, his voice low, confirming what she already knew. "They are also mine," Sophia retorted, her voice sharper than she intended. "My work, my truth, not yours to leverage." Felix picked up one of the prints, his fingers brushing the glossy surface. "And that truth has put a target on your back, Miss Irving, a very large one." He didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the photo. Solis doesn't tolerate loose ends, especially not those with photographic memory. "So, you're just going to use me as a shield?" she challenged, finally turning to face him, her eyes flashing. He met her gaze, his dark eyes unwavering. "I'm offering you a choice. Cooperate and live to tell your own story. Refuse, and Solis will ensure you never get the chance." He paused, then laid the photo back down. "I have something else for you to consider." He walked over to a sleek console, touching a hidden button. A large screen descended from the ceiling, glowing to life. It displayed a map of Los Angeles, centered on her old apartment building in the Arts District. Red dots pulsed around it, then coalesced into a tight cluster. "This was 2 hours ago," Felix said, his voice flat. "Solis's people, searching for you. They knew where you lived. They knew your habits." Sophia's blood ran cold. Her apartment, her sanctuary. She saw the familiar street, the corner cafe, the mural she'd photographed 100 times. A knot of fear twisted in her stomach, raw and visceral. They were there, right outside her door. She could almost hear the quiet footsteps, the rustle of clothes, the whispered threats. "My network intercepted them," Felix continued, his eyes on the screen. "Before they could gain entry, a warning was sent. They scattered. For now." He turned back to her, the screen behind him still showing the pulsating red dots, a stark reminder of how close she had come to being found. "This is not a game, Sophia. This is your life. The price of safety, of your life, is active cooperation." He didn't need to elaborate. The message was chillingly clear. Her freedom, her ethical purity, her very existence hinged on her willingness to play his game. She saw the truth in his words, the undeniable, terrifying reality of her situation. Solis was a ghost, a shadow, but his reach was terrifyingly real. He had been at her door. He would be again. Sophia felt the last vestiges of her resistance crumble. She hated it, hated the feeling of being cornered, of having her principles bent and twisted. But she saw no other path. Felix, for all his dangerous ambiguity, was her only shield against a much darker, more ruthless enemy. She closed her eyes, a wave of despair washing over her. The murder, her photos, the threat. It was all too much. "Okay," she whispered, the word barely audible. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "I'll consider your proposal, but I'm not trusting you. Not yet." Felix's expression remained unreadable, but a faint, almost imperceptible nod acknowledged her reluctant concession. He had won this round, and she hated him for it. But she was alive. For now. And that, she realized, was a terrifying, undeniable truth. The penthouse air, once a suffocating blanket, now felt charged with a different kind of dread. Sophia had agreed to consider Felix's proposal, but the word tasted like dust. Her principles screamed defiance, but the image of Solis's men outside her apartment, the pulsating red dots on Felix's screen, had frozen her rebellion. She still didn't trust him, not truly, but the reality of her danger was a cold, undeniable fact. Felix stood by the expansive window, his back to the city lights, a silhouette of contained power. He hadn't pressed her after her reluctant concession, allowing the weight of her choice to settle. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, devoid of emotion, yet it carried the force of absolute truth. "Marco Solis isn't just a developer with cartel ties, Sophia," he began, turning to face her. "That's what the public, what even most law enforcement sees. But that's a carefully constructed facade. His empire is woven into the fabric of this city, not with violence primarily, but with money, laundered money." Sophia hugged herself, a shiver running down her arms. She'd heard whispers of corruption, of course. Los Angeles was built on a foundation of dreams and dirty deals. But Felix's tone, the quiet certainty in his eyes, made it terrifyingly real. He walked over to a large digital display embedded in the wall, activating it with a silent command. Maps of LA appeared, overlaid with intricate diagrams. "These aren't just construction sites," he explained, pointing to a cluster of glowing symbols in the arts district, right where she'd spent countless hours. "These are legitimate businesses, galleries, restaurants, even a few non-profits, all purchased or heavily invested in by Solis's shell corporations. They're fronts, clean money in, dirty money out, endlessly recycled." Sophia's breath hitched. Galleries. Her world. The places she frequented. The spaces she believed in, potentially tainted by this man's insidious reach. Her stomach churned. It wasn't just anonymous crime. It was infecting the very heart of the community she cherished, exploiting art. Just as her past collaborator had exploited her art, the scale of the deception was dizzying. Felix continued, his finger tracing lines across the digital map. "He's got connections in city planning, in various licensing boards, even in some of the smaller independent media outlets. He's diversified, protected. Any conventional investigation gets stalled, diverted, buried under layers of bureaucracy and plausible deniability." Sophia felt the full, sickening weight of it. This wasn't a street thug she could expose with a single click. This was a hydra, its heads buried deep within the city's infrastructure, regenerating faster than any honest hand could cut them down. The idealism that usually fueled her now felt like a fragile, foolish thing against such a formidable enemy. "How do you even know all this?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. He met her gaze, a flicker of something unreadable in his dark eyes. "My family has been in this city for generations, Sophia. We know its pulse, its hidden veins. We know where the rot sets in." He paused, then his voice hardened, bringing her back to the immediate, terrifying present. "Which brings us back to your photographs." He gestured back to the table where her prints lay, stark and accusatory. "These aren't just images of a murder. They are irrefutable proof of Marco Solis's involvement in a violent act, connected directly to his operations. A public, undeniable act that he cannot bury, cannot redirect, cannot spin away." "So my photos are the only thing?" she asked, the words a bitter echo, the central conflict of her new, horrifying reality. "The only thing," Felix confirmed, his eyes unwavering. "Conventional means fail. My methods are less conventional, but they require public pressure to truly dismantle his empire, not just lop off a limb. Your truth, Sophia, in those frames, is the only weapon that can expose him beyond doubt. Ignite the public and force the hand of those he's compromised. It's the only thing that can truly topple him." Sophia looked from Felix to her photos, then back to the glowing map of her city, now a sprawling web of corruption. She had stumbled into a war, a conflict far larger than she could have ever imagined. Her goal had been to publish truth without becoming a headline. Now the truth she held could be the headline, the earthquake that brought down an empire. The full scope of what she had stumbled into, the immense, terrifying power she unwittingly held, crashed over her. She was no longer just a witness. She was a fulcrum, and her camera, once a tool for quiet observation, was now a cannon. The luxurious penthouse, once a shocking contrast, now felt like a suffocating cage. Days bled into one another, marked only by the changing light beyond the panoramic windows. Sophia paced, a restless tiger, the plush carpets muffling her frantic energy. Her 35mm camera, her silent companion, lay untouched on a side table, a cruel reminder of the vibrant world she was locked away from. She missed the grit of the arts district, the smell of paint and exhaust, the anonymous bustle of humanity. Here, every silence screamed, every lavish detail felt like a tightening chain. She needed to breathe. She needed to see something real, something that wasn't filtered through Felix Parker's controlled environment. The truth she sought, the truth she held in her camera, felt distant, distorted by her confinement. When Felix entered, his usual quiet efficiency punctuated by the soft click of the door, Sophia didn't hesitate. "I need to go out," she declared, her voice sharp, surprising even herself. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. He paused, his dark eyes assessing her, a familiar blend of calculation and something she couldn't quite decipher. "That's not advisable, Sophia. Solis's network is extensive. His people are still looking." "I don't care," she retorted, stepping closer, her jaw tight. "I'm not a prisoner. I'm a witness, and I need to clear my head. I need to feel the sun, to see something besides these walls, or I won't be any use to you. My resolve will break." She saw a flicker in his eyes, a subtle recognition, perhaps, of her own stubborn will. "A gallery," she pressed, seizing the moment. "Somewhere quiet, supervised, your people, my terms." Felix studied her for a long moment, then gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "Very well. A discreet visit. You will be escorted. You will follow every instruction. And you will understand that this is not a taste of freedom, but a demonstration of the danger." His voice was low, a warning wrapped in concession. Hours later, Sophia found herself in a sleek, unmarked car, Felix beside her, his presence a constant, unnerving anchor. The city outside rushed by, a kaleidoscope of familiar streets and buildings. Her heart hammered, a mix of thrill and terror. The destination was a small, independent gallery nestled on a side street, known for its minimalist installations. It was exactly the kind of place she used to frequent, a sanctuary. Inside, the hushed atmosphere, the stark white walls, the abstract art. It was a balm and a torment. She wandered, feigning interest in a sculpture, her senses heightened, every nerve ending alive. She could feel the weight of Felix's watchful presence, and the more subtle, pervasive hum of his security detail discreetly positioned around the room. It was a strange echo of her old life, a ghost of normalcy. She was examining a particularly stark black-and-white photo series, ironically street photography, when a chill snaked up her spine. It wasn't the air conditioning, it was a feeling, a prickling sensation on the back of her neck. She subtly glanced around, her eyes sweeping over the few other patrons. A woman in a wide-brimmed hat, too elegant for this small gallery. A man engrossed in his phone, but his posture too rigid. Then she saw him, just a fleeting glimpse. A man at the far end of the room, near the exit, his eyes, dark and piercing, were fixed on her. He wasn't looking at the art, he was looking at her. For a split second their gazes locked. There was no aggression, no overt threat, just a cold, knowing intensity that made her blood run cold. Then he turned and melted into the shadows of the doorway, gone as quickly as he appeared. Sophia's breath caught. She hadn't seen him enter. She hadn't heard him leave. He was just there, and then not. Felix was instantly beside her, his hand lightly on her elbow, a question in his eyes. "Everything all right?" he murmured, his voice deceptively calm. She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze darted to the empty doorway. The encounter had lasted seconds, but it had left her shaken. It wasn't a close call, not a direct threat. It was a whisper, a reminder. "We know where you are. We can get to you." The art around her, once a source of comfort, now felt like a fragile barrier against a predatory world. This outing hadn't given her freedom. It had shown her the true dimensions of her gilded cage. The danger wasn't confined to the penthouse. It was out here, breathing the same air, lurking in the same spaces. A fresh wave of anger, cold and sharp, washed over her. She was not a victim. She would not be hunted. That fleeting, terrifying glimpse of the man solidified something within her. It didn't break her resolve. It hardened it. She had to fight, not just for her life, but for the truth, for the city she loved, for every compromised gallery and stolen dream. She would use her camera, her art, not as a pawn, but as a weapon. And Felix Parker, for all his dangerous methods, was her unlikely, terrifying ally. The lingering unease from the gallery outing clung to Sophia like a shroud. The man's eyes, the silent, knowing gaze, had seeped into her bones. She paced the penthouse, the city lights blurring into an indifferent mosaic beyond the glass, every shadow in the opulent room seeming to hold a hidden threat. She hadn't felt freedom out there, only the chilling confirmation that the danger was omnipresent, reaching far beyond the controlled environment of Felix's sanctuary. The door clicked, and Felix entered, his presence a sharp, immediate shift in the room's atmosphere. This time his usual controlled demeanor carried an edge of urgency she hadn't seen before. His eyes, usually unreadable, were focused, intense. He held a thick, manila envelope in one hand. Sophia stopped pacing, her heart immediately leaping into a frantic rhythm. "What is it?" she demanded, her voice tight. She didn't need to ask if something was wrong. She could feel it. "An escalation," Felix stated, his voice low, confirming her worst fears. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Solis's network made a direct move. They attempted to access your apartment. Your old apartment." Sophia gasped, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. Her sanctuary. The one place she thought was truly hers, untouched by this nightmare. The image of the red dots on the map, pulsing around her building, flashed behind her eyes. This wasn't a warning anymore. It was an invasion, a violation. "When?" she choked out, her hands clenching into fists. "Less than an hour ago. 3 men, professional. They had keys, presumably from a corrupt landlord or a bribed neighbor. They were thorough." He watched her, gauging her reaction. "My people were in position. They intercepted them. A clear message was sent that the property was unavailable. They retreated without incident, but the intent was clear." A wave of nausea washed over Sophia. They had been inside, or almost. Her camera, her undeveloped film, her personal effects, all vulnerable. She imagined their hands touching her things, rifling through her life. The violation was deeply personal, far more terrifying than the distant threat of Solis himself. Felix's network, his omnipresent reach, had saved her again. The realization was both a comfort and a fresh sting of powerlessness. "They won't try again," Felix assured her, his voice firm. "Not there, but it confirms their desperation. They believe you have something invaluable, and they will stop at nothing to get it." "And you have something invaluable too, don't you?" Sophia retorted, the anger now eclipsing her fear. "My photos, my life, all tied up in your war." Felix didn't flinch. He walked to the marble table and placed the manila envelope down. The weight of it seemed to thud in the quiet room. "This," he said, tapping the envelope, "is more invaluable information about Solis's operation, the full extent of his reach." Sophia stared at the plain, unmarked envelope, a new kind of dread settling in. It felt less like a gift and more like a burden, a tangible representation of the web she was now entangled in. "Open it," Felix instructed. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pulled back the metal clasp. Inside were stacks of documents, financial reports, property deeds, and a few grainy photographs of shadowed meetings. She pulled out a printed spreadsheet, her eyes scanning the column of names. Her breath hitched. Her gaze landed on a familiar name. The Perennial Gallery, her favorite gallery. The place she had gone just days ago, seeking solace, a place she trusted, a beacon of authenticity in the arts district. It was listed among Solis's shell corporations under suspicious financial ties. "The Perennial?" she whispered, the name a betrayal on her tongue. It couldn't be, not her gallery. The idealism she clung to, the belief in art as a force for good, felt like it was crumbling around her. This wasn't just about anonymous money laundering, it was infecting the very heart of her world, the places she held sacred. Felix watched her face, his expression carefully neutral. He had given her enough. He had let her see the rot, the insidious spread of Solis's corruption into the institutions she valued. He saw the pain, the anger, the burgeoning resolve in her eyes. He had confirmed the threat, demonstrated his protection, and now shown her the true scope of the enemy. But he still held back the final, most devastating piece of the puzzle. Not yet. She wasn't ready for that specific betrayal. Sophia looked up from the documents, her eyes blazing with a mix of shock and fury. The attempted break-in had been a physical threat. This was an assault on her beliefs, her very identity, her favorite gallery. Tainted. The full weight of the central conflict crashed over her. Her photos, the truth. They weren't just about a murder anymore. They were about exposing a hydra, a monster that was consuming the soul of her city, even the places she loved most. The manila envelope lay open, its contents a stark, undeniable call to arms. The price of her safety, she realized, was no longer just her cooperation. It was her absolute, unwavering commitment to bringing Solis down. And a part of her, a furious, burning part, now wanted nothing more. Sophia had spent days poring over the manila envelope, the evidence of Solis's insidious reach burning into her mind. The attempted break-in at her apartment had been a cold, stark warning, but the revelation about the Perennial Gallery had been a true gut punch. Her sanctuary tainted, her idealism mocked. The anger simmered, a potent fuel now, overriding the paralyzing fear. She wasn't just a witness anymore, she was a target, and a furious one. She found Felix in his study, a room even more austere than the rest of the penthouse, filled with complex monitors displaying data streams she couldn't comprehend. He looked up as she entered, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "We need a plan," Sophia stated, her voice firm, stripped of its previous tremor. She walked to the large digital display that had shown the map of Solis's network. "Not just a strategic release, we need to hit him where it hurts most, where he feels untouchable." Felix leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes studying her, a hint of something akin to approval in their depths. "Go on." "He uses legitimate businesses to launder money, to buy influence," Sophia began, tapping a finger on the glowing map, her photographer's eye already dissecting the information. "He hides in plain sight, so we don't just expose the murder, we expose the system he built around it, the corruption beneath the surface. We make his legitimate empire crumble, piece by piece." She picked up one of her prints, the murder scene, raw and undeniable. "This is the spark, but the fire needs fuel. We link this violence to the financial rot." We show the public that this isn't some back-alley drug deal. It's a symptom of a much larger disease that's infecting their city, their art, their community. Felix nodded slowly. Precisely. But how do we achieve maximum impact? How do we ensure it resonates beyond a fleeting headline? It has to be visual, Sophia insisted, her mind already racing with ideas. And it has to be undeniable. Not just grainy photos in a newspaper, but an exposé that forces people to confront the truth. We don't just leak, we narrate. We use my photos to tell a story. The story of Solis, the developer. The story of the man who died. The story of the city he's destroying. She looked at Felix, a challenge in her gaze. You talk about balance, about your code. Tell me, Felix, what does balance truly mean to you? Is it just removing an inconvenient player, or is it about fixing the rot? Felix rose from his chair, walking to stand beside her, his proximity a potent force. My code, he explained, his voice deeper now, almost reflective, is a necessary evil. This city thrives on certain arrangements. Most are harmless, even beneficial. But when someone like Solis emerges, when they become too greedy, too violent, too uncontrolled, they destabilize everything. They invite scrutiny from outsiders. They damage the ecosystem. Balance, Sophia, is ensuring the system can continue to operate, can continue to manage itself, without attracting the kind of attention that brings it all crashing down. So, not vengeance, Sophia clarified, her eyes searching his, but a kind of dark justice. You're a clean-up crew. He met her gaze, his expression unyielding. I restore order. Solis creates chaos. My goal is not to punish him for a personal vendetta, but to remove a cancerous growth before it consumes the host. Your photographs are the most potent scalpel. Sophia listened, a new understanding dawning. He wasn't a hero, not in any conventional sense. But he wasn't a monster either. Not entirely. He was a pragmatist, operating by a brutal, self-imposed code in a world of shadows. His balance was about maintaining a precarious equilibrium, not for moral purity, but for systemic survival. And for the first time, Sophia saw a glimmer of something complex, almost honorable, beneath the dangerous exterior she had first perceived. He was willing to use unsavory methods, yes, but for a purpose that, in its own twisted way, aligned with her desire to expose truth and dismantle corruption. All right, Sophia said, a decisive nod. Then we don't just release the photos. We release them with a narrative. We show the connections. We make it impossible for him to deny, impossible for anyone to ignore. And we make sure the right people see it. The ones who can't be bought, the ones who will amplify the truth. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Felix's lips. Now you're thinking like a strategist, Miss Irving. His gaze held hers, a silent pact solidifying between them. The lines between them were still blurred, but their objective had finally converged. They were no longer just a captor and his witness. They were allies, bound by a shared enemy and a dangerous, potent plan. Sophia's fingers flew across the keyboard, a flurry of precise clicks and drags. The penthouse, once a cage, now hummed with a different kind of energy, fueled by her own fierce determination. Her raw, incriminating photographs, once a terrifying burden, were now her arsenal. She wasn't just looking at individual frames anymore. She was seeing the narrative, the connections, the devastating story they told when woven together. She meticulously culled the collection, selecting the most impactful shots, the blurred figure of Solis, caught in the act, the gruesome aftermath, the subtle hints of his network gleaned from the manila envelope. Each image was a punch, a clear, undeniable truth. She layered them, sequenced them, building a visual crescendo that would leave no room for doubt. This wasn't just a leak, it was an exhibition, a public trial held in the court of perception. Felix watched her, a silent, steady presence in the periphery, his dark eyes absorbing her intensity. He hadn't interfered with her artistic vision, only offering logistical advice, suggesting which independent outlets had the integrity and reach to handle such volatile material. His trust, unspoken but clear, was a new, strange sensation for Sophia. She still didn't fully understand his world, but she understood his commitment to this objective, to bringing Solis down. And for the first time, she felt like a genuine partner, not a pawn. The first strategic leaks went out in the dead of night, a carefully orchestrated ripple, not a tsunami, but enough to stir the waters. Selected images, accompanied by anonymized, meticulously verified data from Felix's intelligence, landed in the inboxes of a few tenacious investigative journalists. Journalists known for their bite, their refusal to back down from powerful interests. Sophia felt a jolt of adrenaline as she monitored the initial reactions. The buzz started subtly, a tremor in the underground currents of the media world. Whispers became murmurs, then hushed conversations. The photos were too raw, too compelling to ignore. They weren't just evidence, they were art, in the most brutal, honest sense. They captured the truth with an undeniable clarity that transcended mere reporting. Felix's phone, usually a silent sentinel, vibrated with a steady stream of updates. He would relay snippets to Sophia, his voice calm, almost detached, but his eyes held a glint of satisfaction. The LA Sentinel is verifying. The independent voice is preparing a preliminary report. Solis's people are already scrambling, trying to discredit it. Sophia felt a surge of triumph, cold and sharp. Discredit it all they wanted. Her photographs spoke for themselves. They were the truth, captured in celluloid, now unleashed into the digital ether. She had given them life, and now they would live on, beyond her control, beyond Felix's, shaping the narrative, demanding attention. One evening, as they reviewed the latest intelligence, the growing panic in Solis's camp, the escalating internal pressure he faced, Felix found her by the window. The city sprawled beneath them, a vast, glittering expanse. A distant neon sign, half hidden by a skyscraper, cast a fractured reflection onto a slick city street far below, a shimmering, distorted line of electric blue. Sophia pointed to it. "That's how it feels," she murmured, her voice thoughtful. "Like a reflection. Shadowy, maybe, but it's still light, and it still shows you what's real, even if it's broken." Felix followed her gaze, his expression unreadable, but a rare, genuine smile touched the corner of his lips. "Shadows can be very effective, Sophia, especially when they carry the truth." In that moment, a new layer of understanding settled between them. They were two disparate forces, operating in different worlds, yet bound by a shared purpose. She brought the light of truth. He navigated the shadows of power. Their collaboration wasn't just strategic, it was becoming something deeper, forged in shared risk and a strange, potent chemistry. The city hummed with the nascent tremor of their work, a quiet storm brewing, and Sophia, camera in hand, was finally ready for it. She was no longer just a witness. She was a participant, an architect of the truth, and she wouldn't back down. The game had begun, and she was playing to win. The city, a vast canvas of light and shadow, stretched beneath Sophia's feet. The initial strategic leaks had done their job. The media buzz was a low hum, a growing tremor that promised an earthquake. Sophia felt a surge of grim satisfaction. Her photos were out there, doing their work, chipping away at Solis's carefully constructed facade. She was no longer just a witness. She was a force, an architect of truth, and the taste of it was intoxicating. She was reviewing the latest news feeds on a tablet, a faint, triumphant smile playing on her lips, when Felix entered the room. He moved with his usual quiet precision, but there was a subtle shift in his demeanor, a gravitas that instantly wiped the smile from her face. He carried a sleek black file folder, devoid of any identifying marks. "We have more intelligence," he said, his voice level, but his eyes held a depth she hadn't seen before. It wasn't the detached observation she was used to. It was something heavier, almost regretful. Sophia's breath hitched. She braced herself, anticipating another layer of Solis's corruption, another demonstration of his reach. But nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Felix opened the folder, pulling out a handful of documents and photographs. He laid them on the table between them, not sliding them towards her, but placing them with deliberate care. "The perennial gallery," he began, and Sophia's heart lurched. She remembered the name from the manila envelope, the first chilling hint of corruption in her sanctuary. "I told you, Solis launders money through legitimate fronts," Felix continued, his gaze holding hers, "including art spaces. The perennial Sophia is one of his primary conduits. It's been a front for cartel cash for years." Sophia stared at the documents, her vision blurring. No, it couldn't be. The perennial, her favorite gallery, the place she'd spent countless hours finding inspiration, finding solace. The place she'd visited just days ago, seeking a fleeting sense of normalcy. It was a beacon of authentic art in the arts district, a place she truly believed in. Now, it was just another dirty pipeline. Her stomach twisted, a wave of nausea threatening to overwhelm her. It was a violation, far more personal than the attempted break-in at her apartment. That's impossible," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a desperate plea for him to tell her it wasn't true. Her idealism, her deep-seated trust in the art world, felt like it was shattering into a million pieces. Felix didn't offer comfort. His honesty was brutal, unyielding. He slid a photograph across the table. It showed a figure indistinct, but unmistakable in a specific pose. Her curator, the man she'd respected, confided in, who had always championed her work. The photo was of him, meeting with a known associate of Solis, exchanging what looked like a briefcase. "Even worse, Sophia," Felix continued, his voice softer now, almost a murmur. "Your curator, Elias Vance, he wasn't just complicit in the laundering. He sold information. He sold your location. Twice. To Solis's people. First when they attempted to find you at your apartment, and again after your supervised outing to the gallery." The words hit her like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Her curator, Elias, the man who had praised her eye, who had offered her advice, who had seemed genuinely invested in her career. He hadn't just betrayed her art, he had betrayed her. Directly, deliberately. Her past trauma, the raw wound of being burned by a collaborator, ripped open, bleeding fresh pain. She had been so careful, so guarded. She had sworn never to trust again, only to find herself betrayed by someone she had implicitly, foolishly trusted with her artistic sanctuary. It was a deeper cut than any of Solis's men could have inflicted. She felt stupid, naive, her idealism a cruel joke. The world she believed in, the truth she sought, was just as corrupt, just as treacherous as the dark underworld Felix inhabited. Felix watched her, his expression grim. He didn't try to soften the blow. He let the truth land, raw and devastating. "I needed to tell you, Sophia," he said, his voice firm, "because this isn't just about Solis anymore. It's about how deeply the rot has spread, and how personal it is for you." Sophia looked at him, tears stinging her eyes, blurring the incriminating photos. He had laid out the ugliest truth, unflinchingly. He hadn't manipulated her, hadn't hidden anything to spare her feelings. He had been brutally, painfully honest. And in that moment of profound, soul-crushing betrayal by someone else, a strange, fierce spark of trust ignited for Felix. He might be a man of shadows, but he didn't lie. He didn't exploit her trust, even when revealing the exploitation of others. His strange code of honor, once baffling, now made a terrifying, compelling kind of sense. He was dangerous, yes, but he was real. The raw wound of Elias's betrayal burned, but it also cleansed. It stripped away the last vestiges of her naive idealism, leaving behind a hard, crystalline core of pure fury. She wouldn't just expose Solis for the murder. She would tear down his entire empire, starting with the very place that had betrayed her art and her trust. She would make them all pay, and she would do it with Felix. Sophia felt the betrayal like a physical wound, a searing hot blade twisted in her gut. Elias, the perennial, her sanctuary, her trust, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The idealism that had once defined her now lay in ruins, replaced by a cold, searing rage. She stared at the incriminating photos Felix had laid out, the evidence of Elias's complicity, of his calculated treachery. It was a deeper cut than any bullet, a desecration of everything she believed in. But the devastation didn't paralyze her. Instead, it ignited something fierce and unyielding within her. This wasn't just about Solis anymore. It was about reclaiming her own stolen narrative, about making a stand for every artist, every idealist who had been crushed beneath the heel of corruption. Her past trauma, the sting of that previous collaboration, echoed, but this time it wouldn't break her. This time she would fight back, not as a victim, but as a force. Her agency, once dormant under the weight of fear and confinement, roared to life. She looked up from the photos, her eyes blazing, meeting Felix's gaze. He stood across from her, a silent, watchful presence, his expression unreadable, but she saw a flicker there, a recognition, perhaps, of the storm brewing inside her. "They used my art," Sophia said, her voice low, trembling with suppressed fury. "They used my trust. They exploited everything I believed in." She clenched her fists, her knuckles white. Then the truth must be unveiled in the very place that exploited it, in the heart of their deception. Felix raised an eyebrow, a subtle invitation for her to elaborate. "The perennial gallery," Sophia continued, her mind already racing, images and plans forming with furious speed. "They have that closed museum installation coming up, don't they? The one for the big donors, the press, the industry elites. The one Elias has been so excited about." Her voice dripped with bitter sarcasm. "He'll be there, won't he? Solis will be there. All the people who benefit from this dirty money parading their false patronage." A wicked, dangerous smile touched her lips, a stark contrast to the tears that still clung to her lashes. "That's our stage. Not a leaked document, not a quiet exposé. We don't just send them the photos. We show them. We project them. Big, undeniable, in their faces, in the very space they use to launder their blood money." Felix watched her, his expression slowly shifting from assessment to something akin to profound respect. He saw the fire, the ingenuity, the sheer audacity of her proposal. He saw not just a witness, but a strategist, a leader. His dangerous world had found its unlikely, formidable partner. "A public reveal," he murmured, weighing the words. "At the installation. It would be devastating and permanent." "It would be the truth," Sophia corrected, her chin lifting, a sudden fierce pride radiating from her. "Displayed in the most undeniable way. My photographs, my narrative, reclaiming the space that tried to silence me. We don't ask for permission, we take it." He took a step towards her, his dark eyes intense, a silent question. "Are you certain, Sophia? This is a direct confrontation. It will be dangerous. Far more dangerous than anything we've done so far." "I am beyond certain," she stated, her voice unwavering. "They want to bury me, bury the truth. Then I'll bury them, with light, with my camera, with every single frame I've captured." She looked at him, her gaze clear and unwavering. Can you do it, Felix? Can you give me that stage? Can you ensure the press is there, that Solis can't escape, that Elias can't hide? Can you commit to my plan?" Felix held her gaze, a powerful, unspoken affirmation passing between them. He had seen enough. He had witnessed her transformation from terrified witness to resolute warrior. His pragmatism recognized the brilliance of her strategy, but his deeper, more human side, the one he rarely showed, recognized the courage. "I can," he said, his voice firm, absolute. "Every resource, every connection, my entire network, at your command." He took her hand, his grip surprisingly gentle yet undeniably strong. "We will make this happen, Sophia. On your terms, for your truth." Their late-night planning sessions began immediately, fueled by coffee and a shared dangerous purpose. The penthouse, once a solitary prison, now buzzed with activity. Monitors glowed with blueprints of the perennial, schedules of the installation, lists of key attendees. Felix's people moved with quiet efficiency, gathering intelligence, coordinating logistics. Sophia, now fully in command, curated her images with a new, ruthless precision, selecting the most damning, the most visually arresting. She didn't just choose photos, she crafted an experience, a relentless barrage of truth. Above the city, the rooftop helipad lights of Felix's building pulsed, a beacon against the vast Los Angeles night. They symbolized the height of their coordinated efforts, a dangerous alliance forged in betrayal and illuminated by a shared, unyielding commitment to justice. The game was no longer just about survival. It was about triumph. And Sophia, armed with her camera and Felix's formidable power, was ready to seize it. The penthouse hummed with a tension so thick Sophia could almost taste it, metallic and sharp on her tongue. It was the eve of exposure, the final breath before the plunge. Every nerve ending felt raw, stretched taut like a violin string ready to snap. Sleep was a distant, unreachable luxury, replaced by a relentless current of adrenaline that coursed through her veins, a potent mix of fear and exhilarating resolve. She sat at a large, illuminated table surrounded by her photographs. Not the glossy, pristine prints Felix had initially made, but custom-prepared slides and digital files, meticulously optimized for the gallery's high-definition projectors. Her fingers, usually steady, trembled slightly as she reviewed each frame one last time. The murder scene, stark and brutal, the subtle damning shots of Solis's network caught in clandestine meetings, the ledger entries from the perennial, proof of its rotten core. And Elias, her betrayer, his face frozen in a moment of duplicity. Each image was a hammer blow, and she was preparing to wield them all. This wasn't just about showing the truth. It was about overwhelming them with it, making it impossible to deny, to ignore, to spin away. Her photographer's eye, honed by years of seeking authenticity, now saw the tactical advantage in every pixel, every shadow. She arranged them into a narrative, a relentless visual onslaught that would strip Solis bare, expose Elias, and dismantle the illusion of their power. Felix moved around the penthouse with his usual quiet efficiency, but even he carried a noticeable edge. He was on calls, his voice low and clipped, a constant hum of strategic planning in the background. His security detail, an invisible army Sophia now knew existed, was being deployed, every angle of the perennial gallery meticulously mapped out. He anticipated every possible countermove from Solis, every contingency, every escape route. He appeared beside her, a mug of steaming coffee in his hand, his dark eyes scanning her work. "Everything is in place for the projection," he said, his voice a calm anchor in the storm raging within her. "The tech is secure. The timing is precise." Sophia looked up, her gaze meeting his. "And the press?" A select few, chosen for their integrity and influence, will be invited to arrive precisely when the show begins, Felix confirmed. They won't know what they're walking into until the lights change. Solis won't have time to block them, to pay them off. They'll see it all. A shiver of grim satisfaction ran through her. This was it. No more whispers, no more shadows. Just light. Blinding, undeniable light. What about Solis? She asked, a knot forming in her stomach. He'll be there. And Elias. Felix's jaw tightened. They will be. My people will ensure they remain in the main gallery space, and once your projections begin, they won't be able to leave without making a very public spectacle. He paused, his gaze softening slightly. Are you ready for that, Sophia? To see their faces when the truth hits? Sophia took a deep breath, the scent of fresh coffee grounding her. I'm ready, she affirmed, her voice steady. The thought of seeing Solis's carefully constructed composure shatter, of watching Elias's betrayal exposed, filled her with a fierce, cold resolve. This wasn't just about justice, it was about reclamation, her art, her trust, her agency. Solis won't go quietly, Felix cautioned, his eyes hard. He'll try to discredit you, to intimidate. He'll lash out. Let him, Sophia retorted, a dangerous spark in her eyes. My photographs speak for themselves, and this time there will be no twisting the narrative. Not in a room full of witnesses, not with my images burning onto every wall. She picked up her camera, the familiar weight a comfort, a weapon. The stakes have never been higher, Felix. Everything we've worked for, everything I am, comes down to tomorrow night. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the immense pressure, the precarious balance they had created. Then we ensure it's flawless, Sophia. Every angle covered, every escape route blocked, every truth illuminated. His gaze held hers, a silent pact of shared risk and unwavering commitment. The city outside waited, oblivious to the storm about to break. And Sophia, armed with her truth, was ready to unleash it. The hushed reverence of the perennial gallery felt like a mockery. Sophia stood amidst the invited press and industry elites, a ghost in her own former sanctuary. The air buzzed with polite chatter, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of self-congratulatory whispers. Marco Solis, impeccably tailored, held court near a minimalist sculpture, his smile radiating false charm. And there, near the entrance, was Elias Vance, her curator, his face a mask of professional affability, completely unaware of the abyss about to open beneath his feet. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of her resolve. Her palms were damp, a fine tremor running through her hands, but her gaze was steady, fixed on the projector controls discreetly hidden behind a velvet rope. Felix stood a few feet away, a dark, unyielding presence, his eyes meeting hers across the room, a silent promise of support. His security, an unseen net, was already in place, blocking any casual exit. A spotlight suddenly hit the main stage, signaling the start of the installation. Elias stepped forward, beaming, ready to introduce the evening's curated art. Sophia felt a surge of cold fury. He would not tonight. Her fingers, despite their tremor, moved with practiced precision. A quick, almost imperceptible flick of a switch. The gallery plunged into darkness. A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by murmurs of confusion. Then the silence was shattered by a blinding, visceral light. From every corner, from hidden projectors embedded in the pristine white walls, light erupted. Not the abstract art Elias had planned, but her photographs, her truth. The first image hit, with the force of a physical blow, the riverbed underpass, stark and raw, illuminated by the distorted neon reflection. Then, the slumped figure. The sickening aftermath. The dark, unmistakable silhouette of Marco Solis, caught in the act. The image, blown up to monumental scale, pulsated across the entire main wall, undeniable, horrifying. Gasps turned into choked cries. Phones flashed as reporters, suddenly alert, began snapping photos of the wall, then of Solis, then back to the wall. Sophia didn't falter. She triggered the next sequence. Rapid fire, relentless. Images of Solis's shell corporations overlaid with the names of cartel associates. Blurred photographs of illicit meetings in shadowed parking lots. Bank ledgers, damning and meticulous, detailing the money laundering through seemingly legitimate businesses. The perennial gallery's own name, glowing red, scrolled across the bottom of the screen. The room erupted. Shouts of disbelief, accusations, the frantic clicking of camera shutters. Solis's face, moments ago composed, was now a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He roared, a guttural sound that sliced through the chaos, lunging towards the nearest exit. But he couldn't. Felix's command, echoing in her mind from hours ago. No guns, just light. His security team, indistinguishable from the other guests moments before, now moved with quiet authority, subtly but firmly blocking every exit. Not with violence, but with their sheer, unyielding presence. No one could leave, not without walking through a wall of cameras and a gauntlet of damning truth. Sophia's gaze sought Elias. He stood frozen, his face ashen, eyes wide with terror as the images of the perennial's illicit dealings, then his own shadowy meeting with Solis's associate, flashed across the walls. His betrayal, magnified, public. He looked at Sophia, a desperate, frantic plea in his eyes, but she met it with a cold, unwavering stare. He had sold her. Now she was selling him. The final sequence began. A montage of her most damning shots, culminating in a colossal image of Solis's face, framed by the murder scene, juxtaposed with the perennial's elegant facade. The raw truth, undeniable, burned onto every surface of the gallery. Solis was screaming now, threats and curses, his carefully constructed composure shattered into a million pieces. He lunged again, desperate, but Felix's men held firm, a quiet, immovable barrier. The flash of 100 cameras captured his downfall, every contorted line of his face, every desperate, futile struggle. Sophia watched it all, her heart still hammering, but now with a strange, fierce triumph. Her camera, once an unwitting witness, was now the instrument of justice. Her voice, once silenced, now thundered through the gallery, amplified by light and truth. She had done it. She had published the truth, not as a headline, but as an earthquake. And in the chaotic, devastating light of her triumph, Felix Parker stood by her side, a silent, powerful anchor, his gaze locked on hers, a shared, dangerous victory in their eyes. The gallery was a maelstrom. Sirens wailed outside, mixing with the shouts of reporters and the stunned silence of the few remaining elites. Police swarmed, their uniforms a stark contrast to the shattered elegance of the art space. Solis, his face purple with fury, was being led away in handcuffs, his furious protests swallowed by the chaos. Elias Vance, pale and trembling, clung to a pillar. His career, his reputation utterly destroyed, exposed on the very walls he had once curated. Sophia stood amidst it all, a strange calm settling over her. The adrenaline, once a raging river, now receded, leaving behind a profound exhaustion, but also an undeniable sense of triumph. Her photographs, projected moments ago, still flashed on a few auxiliary screens, a ghostly reminder of the truth she had unleashed. She had done it. She had published the truth, not as a headline for her own demise, but as an earthquake that had shaken an empire to its core. Her integrity, battered but not broken, felt like a clean, sharp edge within her. Felix Parker was beside her, a quiet, unyielding presence in the storm. He hadn't spoken since the projectors ignited, his dark eyes taking in the scene, observing the unraveling with a detached satisfaction. He hadn't gloated. hadn't sought recognition. He had simply stood by her, a silent anchor in the chaos she had created. She looked at him now, truly looked at him. The man who had taken her, caged her, pushed her to the brink. The man who had revealed uncomfortable truths, who operated in shadows, but who had, against all odds, kept every single one of his promises. He had given her the stage, protected her, and ultimately trusted her to wield the light. The price of safety had been high, she realized. Her freedom, her naive belief in a purely good world, her sense of control. But the lines of consent, once so blurred and terrifying, had ultimately been drawn by her. She had dictated the terms, chosen the weapon, commanded the stage. She hadn't been exploited. She had orchestrated her own victory, using his power to amplify her truth. A police officer approached, asking for her statement, his voice muffled by the ringing in her ears. She answered calmly, concisely, the camera still clutched in her hand. It was no longer a burden, but a testament, a symbol of her reclaimed power. Later, as Felix subtly guided her through a discreet side exit, away from the remaining media frenzy, she felt a profound weight lift. The immediate danger was gone. Solis was exposed, his empire beginning its inevitable collapse. She was free. She could walk away. She could disappear back into the anonymity of the arts district, find a new sanctuary, rebuild her life, untainted by the shadows he inhabited. That was the logical choice, the safe choice. But as she stepped into the cool night air, the city lights shimmering around them, she glanced at Felix. His profile was sharp, enigmatic, illuminated by the distant glow of a neon sign. He hadn't asked her to stay. He hadn't made a plea. He simply waited, his presence an unspoken question, a strange, potent mixture of respect, understanding, and an undeniable, dangerous chemistry swirled within her. He was not her ideal, not the man she would have ever chosen, but he was real. He saw her, truly saw her, not as a fragile idealist, but as a formidable force, and he had allowed her to be exactly that. She stopped walking, turning fully to face him. Her heart gave a soft, decisive thud. No, she wouldn't walk away, not entirely, not yet. She had fought for her agency and she would use it. "This gallery," Sophia said, her voice clear, resolute. "It's seized now, it's empty. It needs to become something else, something for the community, something that truly champions art, not exploits it." Felix's dark eyes, usually so guarded, held a flicker of surprise, then understanding. He knew what she was asking, not a departure, but a redirection, a new project, a new partnership, one where her moral compass, her vision, would lead. "And how do you propose we achieve that, Sophia?" he asked, his voice low, a subtle challenge, an invitation. She met his gaze, a faint, determined smile touching her lips. "By writing new rules, Felix, my rules, for a new kind of balance, a balance that truly serves the truth." He didn't answer with words. He simply nodded, a slow, deliberate acknowledgement. The unspoken choice had been made. Not a surrender, but a new beginning, a partnership forged in the crucible of truth and shadows, with rules written by her. And Sophia, for the first time in a long time, felt a fierce, terrifying hope for what lay ahead. Months later, the perennial gallery hummed with a different kind of energy. No longer a sterile front for illicit cash, it vibrated with life, a true community co-op. Bright murals, painted by local artists, adorned its exterior walls, replacing the stark, impersonal facade. Inside, the space Sophia had once sought solace in, then exposed as a den of betrayal, was now a vibrant hub of creativity. Children's laughter echoed from art workshops, aspiring photographers huddled around light tables, and the air smelled not of expensive cynicism, but of paint, paper, and possibility. It was a tangible act of redemption, a monument to a truth fiercely fought for, guided by Sophia's unwavering vision and quietly, effectively facilitated by Felix Parker's formidable influence. Sophia moved through the bustling rooms, her trusty 35mm camera slung comfortably across her chest. Her lens, once focused on exposing the ugliness beneath the surface, now sought out stories of hope and change. She captured a young girl, eyes wide with wonder, brushing vibrant blue onto a canvas. She documented a group of teenagers collaborating on a digital art project, their faces alight with shared purpose. Her purpose hadn't shifted from truth, but the truth itself had expanded, becoming richer, more nuanced. She still saw the shadows of the city, but now her camera sought the light that pushed them back. Felix often found her here, observing from the periphery, a dark suit against a canvas of color. He had ensured the legal battles were won, the resources secured, the new board established according to Sophia's meticulous blueprint. His methods, still operating in the shadows of the city's power structures, were subtly refined, less about control, more about careful, strategic support. His balance was still his code, but now it was undeniably inflected with her idealism, a subtle shift she sometimes caught in his guarded eyes. One crisp evening, they stood on a secluded rooftop overlooking the arts district, the city lights twinkling like scattered diamonds. A new mural, recently completed on a prominent wall below, depicted a phoenix rising from vibrant, chaotic flames. It was bold, defiant, beautiful. "It's good," Felix murmured, his voice low, his gaze fixed on the mural. "A testament." Sophia leaned against the railing, the cool metal a familiar sensation. "To what we built," she replied, her voice soft. "To the rules we wrote." Their partnership, once born of coercion and fear, had blossomed into something unique, potent, and undeniably hers. He still made calls, still pulled strings, still navigated the treacherous currents of LA's hidden power. But every action, every decision that touched her world passed through her. "No hits for hire, only balance," was still his mantra, but now her moral compass steered the direction of that balance. She was no longer a witness, nor a pawn. She was the architect, and he, her formidable, silent ally. He turned to her, the distant glow of the city painting his profile in stark lines. There was no grand declaration, no sweeping romantic gesture, just the quiet intensity in his eyes, the subtle shift in his posture that spoke volumes. The tension that had once been fear now thrummed between them as a dangerous, exhilarating current. "What's next, Sophia?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, yet it held the weight of their future. She looked from the vibrant phoenix mural to his dark, unyielding gaze. Her fingers, still warm from the smooth metal of her camera, reached out, finding his hand. His grip was firm, a silent promise. "Whatever we decide," she said, her voice filled with a quiet power, "together." The city lights blurred around them, a tapestry of their shared, complicated world. Their unique, dark romance was not a fairy tale, but a story forged in fire and truth, with rules written by her, every chapter still waiting to be captured by her lens. If you enjoyed the video, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel to keep up with our content.